this particular bear market was really acutely felt by the Solana ecosystem. But for whatever reason, it seems like the fight or flight instinct kicked into a lot of projects, and it really showed that like there's awesome builders, there's awesome communities, and like all this stuff is still there.
Welcome everybody into another spotlight of the best projects in crypto on the year here at Coinage, the only community-owned and steered project in media by our NFT holders and backed by the co-founder of Netflix. I'm the host of Coinage, Zach Guzman, coming to you live from our Brooklyn studios in New York City, thanks in part to our latest sponsor, BitGo, helping investors and builders by offering seamless integration with exchanges and market makers to trade with quality execution from cold storage. With BitGo, provide the most secure asset solutions for your users and builders alike. Today, we've got two giants in the crypto space, and celebrating them both on Coinage today, Optimism and Solana, two huge projects that no doubt everyone's been watching, and two huge players themselves in the space. I don't know if I need to introduce them, but I have to contractually. We've got Anatoly Yakovenko here, the co-founder of Solana Labs, as well as Optimism's Chief Growth Officer, Ryan Wyatt, on the space with us today. Guys, I appreciate you hopping on and celebrating what you guys' teams have been up to this year. A lot to get into with you both. And thanks again for taking the time, and congrats on being nominated by our community as Projects of the Year. Toly, you've been on Coinage before, man, so I think we have to first welcome Ryan. And also congrats, Ryan, on the new role over at Optimism. How we're going to do this is we're going to chat with both of you guys going back and forth and just have a conversation about what it's like to build here in 2023 and what we've got planned for both Optimism and Solana, what people should be aware of for 2024. But Ryan, for those who maybe don't know, if they've been sleeping on the whole year, maybe they haven't seen what you guys have been up to, but it's been a lot. So we'll start with you, man. How's it been at Optimism this year?
It's good. I'm like a month in, so I'm still, what they say, drinking out of a fire hose. But it's been amazing. I love.
I just don't know if the audio is coming through right now, which is, we're just gonna have that fixed real quick. Hold on, bear with me. The same thing happened earlier this morning, so we've got it all squared away. I swear. Now you're good to go.
I think you need tech challenges as part of this. As we are always dealing with tech challenges in crypto, it only makes sense that you have to face it as well on the production side.
It always happens.
I've been at Optimism like a month now, so I don't claim to know everything, but let me tell you, I've absolutely loved being a part of the team. I'm excited about all the work we're doing. I'm excited to share a little bit about it today, so I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, listen, we're going to get into all of it, and obviously I think it's been interesting to watch the attention and the understanding start to trickle into, all right, how are all these solutions different? That's kind of what our community wants to figure out is, all right, what's the pros, what's the cons, how does it all work?
You want a nice little Optimism elevator pitch, Zach? That sounds like what you're looking for, yeah?
Hell yeah, baby, give it to me.
Yeah. So I think Ethereum is challenging to scale. I won't get into that too much because I think Toly will definitely be able to talk about that as well, with what Solana does to combat that. Our solution is, we're providing the core infrastructure to connect a lot of L2s together, right? So if you think about the user journey or developer journey, it's really fragmented because, Ethereum obviously being too costly to scale on and build on. So you look to these L2s to make it cheap, to make it efficient, but then you're really focused on just one network. You have congestion issues, so it doesn't even solve these underlying issues. So it's highly problematic. So I fully believe that Ethereum will be a core part of the settlement layer for the internet of Web3, but we have to tackle this challenging aspect of scaling. And so we at Optimism built something that's called Superchain, which is effectively this core infrastructure that connects all of these L2s together that interoperate with each other. That makes it a frictionless journey for users to be a part of the ecosystem. So in success of this vision of interoperability, you come into an L2 like Base, which is built on Optimism stack. That is like being a part of OP mainnet. It's like being part of Base, it being part of Zora, and you don't have to worry about all these complications that come with having to pick an individual chain. I think in success, this idea of L2s gets abstracted away, and a user doesn't have to focus on all these different problems. A developer doesn't have to think about what stack they have to build on. So that's a big thing. So think of Optimism as core infrastructure that connects a bunch of chains together to be interoperable with each other. And that we believe that's the best way to solve the scaling challenges for Ethereum.
Yeah.
And then if you think about what else we do that's really interesting is our retroactive public goods funding. What that does is all those chains that are a part of the ecosystem, Optimism's ecosystem, a percentage of those fees go into a smart contract that go into a community ran funding initiative, and that's basically funding developers that are really impactful to advancing the Optimism ecosystem.
Yeah.
So whether they're building something on Base or building something on OP mainnet or just part of the core stack. And then the last thing I'll say on that and let you jump back in is they also, a lot of these L2s will be core contributors to the underlying dev code. So Base was a meaningful contributor, a recent fork. That's a nice way to like build this thing together with the developers and the broader community. And so Optimism is all about leveraging that and doing this on a unified front with the developers all across the community. So that's Optimism.
Listen, I mean, hey, well done to get it done in just a couple months. You already got that pitch down flat, which I think is respectful for sure. And I think it has been fascinating to see. We had Jesse Pollock on the show not too long ago, too, one of our NFT holders, in terms of seeing how Base is scaling. And Toly, I feel like that's another thing that caught a lot of people's attention because Brian Armstrong was talking not too long ago about potentially scaling what they're trying to do. And yes, of course, you would expect him to mention Base and Optimism, but also maybe hinted at Solana, too, with kind of how cheap things are to run on your guys' network. And again, I think, if there was a comeback project of the year, it'd be easy to name Solana. I think one of them, just because so many people had counted you guys out at the beginning of the year. But what's it been like in terms of just all the enthusiasm and all the attention, I think, returning back to Solana now?
It's been really cool to see because I think it really demonstrates the power of decentralization. Like, labs didn't really do anything. It was very stressful emotionally, very stressful year for me. But what we saw was that all the folks in the community that have been grinding on product for like the last 18 to 24 months, fixing little UX issues and optimizations, it's just making stuff better and better. Like you saw them launch, over 30 different product announcements during Breakpoint, and this is what is creating all the interest in the ecosystem. It's all the companies building on top of Solana and launching awesome products. And it feels like it was like, happened over the last 2 months, but no, these folks have been grinding for the last 18 to 24 months and just building better and better products.
Yeah, I think that's still always the most interesting thing to see in terms of the timeline that it takes for some of these things to come out, right? Like in terms of where you're building and then maybe the lag in time to when the enthusiasm starts to come. And I guess, there are twofold things to cover, as I said, both what you guys did in 2023 and then also what's to come in 2024. And Ryan, you mentioned, I guess, a little bit of terms of how quickly, you're hitting the ground running over there in Optimism. I'll give you both opportunities to maybe look back at maybe even before you were there, but also, I guess, what has you most excited now that you're part of the team at Optimism that's different than maybe some of the other ETH scaling solutions, blockchains, whatever projects you might be looking at?
Yeah, look, I think, one obviously major realization for the Ethereum, space was it's hard to build these things. There's a lot of user and developer friction in deploying. We have to get to a place, you reach congestion and success on some of these protocols. And so we've got to get to a world where we figure out how to really scale, where it doesn't open Pandora's box of more challenges. And so, I think what Optimism was able to do well this past year is get away from, hey, we have this L2, it's called OP mainnet. This is where everything's happening, and start to think of a bigger picture of how this stuff actually meaningfully scales. And so this pivot to Superchain, saying, how do we actually get everybody to do shared network upgrades, actually lean in with each other, build this thing together? It was a big task. It was a huge pivot from a strategy perspective. And pulling it off is not a term I would use. I would say all of the groundwork has been laid for a very fruitful 2024, the Base partnership being kind of the key catalyst. I think when you think about all of these L2s being interconnected and interoperable with each other, having a partner like Coinbase and Base provides a lot of liquidity, provides a lot of users that are going to be coming into the protocol, and everybody that's then a part of that Optimism ecosystem benefits greatly from it. But it's a long journey. Like I think we have a long road ahead of ourselves. And I think anybody that's at the infrastructure layer would agree with that. And so I'm glad that we've got a strategy that solves some of these things from a scaling perspective, but it's time to really execute against that. And so demonstrating interoperability in 2024 will be a big one. I think a fair rebuttal will be like, that's cool, Ryan. It's a cool vision. Sounds good. You got to show it. And I think way too often we have like, showboat marketing in the space that actually doesn't come through. And so I want to be very tempered that we have a big vision. We actually think we can execute on this vision and now start to illustrate what that looks like. And so we'll start to demonstrate interoperability, in 2024. And I think that'll just be a really cool moment for developers, for users, as we continue to tackle some of these challenges. So huge pivot in strategy in 23. Obviously I can't take any credit for being here for 1 month, but the team did great and very happy to advocate on their behalf. But very excited for what it means for 2024 because of this pivot.
Yeah, and totally. I mean, I guess, we were all talking about this coming into this, right? When you talk about, I guess, the sentiment always that exists in terms of, what Solana is doing versus or what's happening in the ETH scaling solutions, which has never really been your take. And I remember seeing a tweet actually from Ryan talking about all the bickering between L2s and L1s and the idea of, all this. It's never really been, and I think I've always respected it in the way that you kind of look at things, totally, in the way that everyone can build, everyone can have different solutions. And I guess the question becomes, what are the metrics that you look at in terms of tracking, which ones are gaining users, dollars, TVL's always discussed. It's always constantly something I throw your way, and I think it's, one that a lot of people in the space respect.
Yeah, like the markets in terms of usage are really macro driven. It's pretty crazy how true that is. And I think this particular bear market was really acutely felt by the Solana ecosystem. But for whatever reason, it seems like the fight or flight instinct kicked in to a lot of projects, and a lot of founders will always usually pick fight over flight. And a lot of folks doubled down and built products that had like really outside successes. Like in my mind, like the whole Solana ecosystem shifted after the Mad Lads launch, because one, it like clearly demonstrated that like the congestion issues that plagued us in like 22 were solved, because you saw like NFTs launch at the same time as the Helium migration was happening. But two, it like really captured the zeitgeist of the time, like across the entire crypto space for, that week or so. And it really showed that like there's awesome builders, there's awesome communities, and like all this stuff is still there. And I think, I don't know, I felt re-energized. I think a lot of the Solana founders felt re-energized, and like it's only been just product launches and watching people like iterate and get better and better product market fit, and like it's just been awesome to see.
Is there one specific thing that you'd call out as maybe moving the needle on that too? Because we've been watching the headlines, and for me, kind of a huge pivot was maybe back in September or so when the announcement came that, USDC and Visa, this partnership to kind of start bringing, TPS is always talked about no matter which project it is, but in terms of payments and what's been going on there, that to me kind of started to trigger maybe people looking closer at what you guys were doing, but I'm not sure if there's something else you would flag.
It's funny that like, yeah, that to me seemed like big company announcements are like, there's a lot of them, and it's awesome to work with Visa's team on like the stuff that's going to take 5 years to build out, right? Like, but it's not an immediate change. Like it does, I think, signal that they did all the research and figured out that Solana actually fits their infrastructure and can deliver cheap and fast payments reliably. That's awesome to see. Like me as an engineer, I'm like very proud of that. But in terms of like on the ground, like in the trenches, where's product market fit happening, that's still, I think, like Visa and payments and transforming the world of payments, it's still going to be a 5-year journey. But what's happening on the ground is like compression, NFTs, all these technologies, local fee markets that shipped. You see users using them, and you see the products like thriving and growing. And that actually, I think, is like the core things that are driving the excitement in the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah, I want to get into a lot of that, the NFT action and things like that too, because it does seem airdrops as well. A lot of the excitement coming back on that side. But Ryan, I'm curious if you would maybe agree with that from Tolly, or if you look at things differently. Obviously, you used to be a Polygon, and we were just chatting this morning with them about all the big partnerships with some big name brands. I mean, what do you look at maybe the key things to maybe bring excitement users to chains, and how impactful some of those bigger partnerships are?
I mean, I'd probably plus one almost all of that to Toli's point. On a personal level, what excites me is just stuff that feels like my perspective on the whole space is way like a long-term perspective. Like I think because of that, even in this last bear market, which, you know, I don't even know if we should be doing victory laps that we're out of it, but this last bear market, you know, one, it was, I think I've never even been in a bull market full time working in crypto, by the way. So I don't know that I know anything differently. You know, when I started at Polygon, I got introduced in the first couple of months to like Terra Luna and all these other things that happened. So for me, it's all I know. So this is my baseline, which I think is probably good for a lot of reasons, but I take such a long-term perspective on it. So it doesn't really rattle me because I am thinking about a lot of the product market fit stuff and how we think about the space long-term. And it's, you know, it's a 10-year run of building this kind of infrastructure out and getting it to a place. And so it allows you to be, I think, much more methodical and even keel on any of these things. And so big brands are going to come and go as this space has its moments. I don't think it's about the just brand announcements. I don't know that that's really exciting. Those are flash in the pan moments. Anybody that's doing anything that's contributing meaningfully to get to us in a 5 to 10 year span on product market fit and actually building stuff that matters and has substance is super interesting to me. And so in general, on anything from a strategic perspective, is trying to take a little bit more of a long view on it. And so what interests me is, you know, working with developers that are going to improve the Optimism ecosystem. You know, we did a partnership with really a team of awesome engineers called Lattice, and they're focusing on alt DA. And so this is going to be great for games because games that want to be fully on chain and are going to drive a bunch of transactions can't take any, like you need a tenth of a penny on some of these costs, you know? So it's always talking about like NFT compression and stuff. That shit's interesting, right? Like how do you actually start to, and what can you do with that? So anyway, I find that value, but it's not as sexy, right? Like us announcing Lattice, I think is going to be huge from an infrastructure perspective for the next 5 to 6 years for us because of what it opens up for developers. But that's not going to catch the front page of Fortune like, you know, when I was at Polygon and we did a partnership with Starbucks, right?
Well, I think that's a good point. That's a good point, though, because it's like, I mean, that's what we as a community-owned show and, you know, media DAO here, like that's the thing. A lot of our community members have their hands dirty or are actively participating in these airdrops. And the thing that moves that community is very different than maybe someone who's going to go to a Starbucks. And Tony, you mentioned NFTs and kind of what's been going on that side. And I feel like that is definitely something that has come back for the Solana ecosystem, as well as, I think, as I mentioned too, just kind of, you know, the airdrops and everything else there with Jito. But you guys also made a pretty big push with the mobile phone, the Saga, this year, and maybe didn't necessarily, you know, it was an experiment. I saw you kind of referring to it or maybe looking at it as, you know, it was maybe other people saying it was a failure, but as we discussed when you were on last time, it's not like you're looking at things like, look, we're going to take down the iPhone with a launch like this. So what did you learn from that launch in the way that you were trying to appeal to users and devs?
Oh, man. I learned a ton. One is that, like, Apple and Samsung, they are very, very good in terms of, like, shipping high-quality hardware really quickly. So you can build a better phone, but it'll be more expensive and it'll take you longer to ship. That's really, really hard to like be competitive there. But what I saw, what was interesting is that like we solved all these problems for key storage and UX that would make like a lot of like wallet attacks impossible. I think like whether that was like the zeitgeist of the industry, but like both our team internally that was not in the Saga team and like other folks really, really started.
I don't know if we lost.
I lost them.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know what happened there. I don't know. He's still going though. He's still talking on this side, and I don't think he can hear me. So, Ryan, we might go back to you because I was curious actually about asking the same question when it comes to things that you've seen, learnings along the way. And you mentioned the Terra Luna backdrop of maybe, I guess, having a base case in terms of what is, I think, you know, experimentation and failure in the space of, you know, trying some of these things out. I don't know if it's maybe impacted your view differently in the way that you build.
Yeah, I mean, look, even like the Saga thing, even just an extension on that, I think it was like super cool for Solana to try that because if that did work, that would have been huge for the space. And so that is thematically worth always doing, like taking risks and making bets on things that may or may not pan out. We see it all the time. This space is so nascent. It's really hard to forecast everything that needs to be done and how best to do it. I mean, I think I did, on a personal level, I think I did a lot of things right at Polygon. I did a lot of things wrong. And so that's just learn, iterate, adapt, and keep building. I think if you think about Optimism, the idea was, hey, we're going to have this, public goods funding, and we're going to drive activity on OP mainnet. And that's not the right strategy. The right strategy is like getting all of these chains to interoperate and what that actually does. So there's different ways of failure. Like you look at some of the things like a Terra Luna as it might have been a little bit more predictable given the risk profile of those bets. So I think that's all relative. You want to take risky bets, but you don't want to ever jeopardize the ecosystem in those bets. So betting on a partnership like Starbucks is a low risk bet. Doing like algorithmic stable coins is a different risk profile. And, to each his own, like that's a whole nother Pandora's box to open on conversation. But I think it's really important that we take big bets, and they're not always going to work out. And the beauty is we can all learn from each other. So you can learn from somebody like Toly's background who understands that space intimately well, and Solana trying that. There's a lot of learnings that the whole space benefits from it. So I encourage anybody that's taking smart, calculated, thoughtful risks that don't jeopardize the industry.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the things too that's been, again, everyone's building in public and watching how these things go, trying to iterate and see what works, see what doesn't. Toly, I think we have you back now, so if you can hear me, I think we've figured everything out. I don't know if I can hear you, but we'll see in a second. And let's see. Can I hear you? Let's see if Toly can say something. We'll see if it doesn't really sound like I can hear right now is what's going on there. You look great though, man. Let me say, it's done wonders since I've seen you last. This rebound, I can see it in the face. It looks like we have a relaxed Toly. Ryan, the other thing too that we always ask everyone, and Toly knows this when they come on, is I think we got him now. Is big bold predictions, and you were just talking. He's back, ladies and gents. And more.
I'll let you pass it over to him, Toly. I tried to step in for you.
He did, and he did a good job. Toly, you cut off when we were talking about the saga.
We had awesome folks that got the phone, loved it, had really, really good reviews, but it wasn't enough, I think, for us to saturate ecosystem of users where it's meaningful for developers to build those applications. And at the same time, we kind of saw software solutions close the attack surface that you have with wallets and seed phrases, like using passkeys and stuff like that. So that difference between using an iOS device that has a passkey generated seed phrase versus a custom device with secure element storage and all this other stuff, it's much, much smaller to where I don't know if it's compelling. The big question we're trying to wrestle internally is there another form factor, like a smart wallet almost, so you can ship the cheapest possible Android that still has a really, really nice hardware just for signing and playing with apps, but then you strip away all the other phone features. We'll see. There's kind of we're bouncing ideas around, but I think what I really, really wanted to accomplish was an app store without any extractive fees, but you need enough users for that to happen. And every developer that I talk to loves the idea of an app store with no fees, but the challenge is they're all the devs got a phone, right? That's great.
Yeah.
But we need enough humans. We need enough humans that actually use the stuff to get one, to get over the hump.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was an interesting thing, and obviously everyone in the space was talking about it when it came out. I think for sure in all the events, and it was exciting to see. And I think looking ahead to 2024, that's the exciting piece now when we think about if Ryan's right, and I would echo what he says. You never know when you're out of it. But Toly, you've been building in this space maybe a bit longer when it comes to the cycles you've seen before, the lows we've all seen before. I mean, what do you expect to see next year as you have some of this excitement spilling into the Bitcoin ETF discussion, and then what that means maybe for Solana specifically?
I would kind of give this advice to every founder out there is that don't worry about the macro noise. The reason why founders succeed is because for years, 18 months, 24 months, they're just constantly iterating on product. And if the macro is contracting, you try to make your existing customers as happy as possible. You got to have like some metric that's growing, right? Like if like there's a bear market and numbers are going down and there's nothing you can do, the users that you have, optimize to make them as happy as possible. Like you always have to think about like how do I make your product better with that like long-term vision in mind.
How did you
And
do
things
that though? Actually, at Solana, I'm curious because how do you do that as a blockchain, as decentralized as you said it's become?
well,
Like, how do you actually do that?
all like I can tell the story to other founders. And like
Hmm.
when they're in the dumps and they're like, oh man, it's been like 6 months, 18, 10 months, a year since like the bull market, everything is just going down. I'm like, look, it's obviously gonna turn around, right? Is software eating finance. That's like a $20 trillion opportunity. It's going to eat it eventually. It's just gonna take time. So
Yeah.
we're gonna see a turnaround, but like the way that you have the most success during a bull market is because you did the grind, right? You grind your product into a diamond over the 18 months, and we got to experience it at the layer one like level every bear market. The first bear market, we built and optimized and built and optimized, and then we're lucky enough to launch right like at the start of the last bull run. Same thing now. We optimize and optimize and optimize, and now you see like all these crazy airdrops and all these events and NFT launches happening on Solana, and fee isolation is working perfectly, and like network
Yeah.
is humming along. So like that's what we can do. That's the grind we can do. Even if like during those 18 months everyone was telling me, look, Solana users are going down month over month. Like all it's macro, right? Like that we
Yeah.
can't change the macro environment, but all the developers that stuck with us saw a continuous improvement, and this is a story that I can tell them, and they like a lot of them took it to heart, and like especially folks like Jito, like Jupiter, like Metaplex, like you've
Yeah.
seen those products get better and better, and it's awesome to see that kind of like when people look at a success they think it just happened overnight. No, this was literally like 24 months in the making of all of these folks grinding like all the time.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and yeah, it's the same thing in terms of building coinage out and our NFT holders and community as well. As things get dark in the bear, but here we are on the other side. I hope Ryan's right, and I think he is. Ryan, when we look ahead to 2024 too, it has been interesting to look at L2s and the way that now even exchanges are leaning into that. In terms of OKX using Polygon for them potentially in L2, you talked about Base and how they're working with you guys at Optimism. And Kraken, maybe also. I'm curious to get your take on what exchanges working with L2s means for the ecosystem, what that maybe potentially could do for Optimism next year. I'm just kind of trying to
Zach, you know
wrap.
I won't kiss and tell. Please, you're not getting anything out of me. I do. Look, I think there's a great opportunity with a narrative that allows for interoperability and success for these exchanges to be able to have their own L2s that are part of this interconnected ecosystem.
Mhm.
There's value there, and then being able, like you look at, like an Aave or Uniswap, where they're having to deploy on all these different chains and so forth. Could they just be a chain themselves inside of a network of interconnected L2s, and is that easier for them? It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting, consideration for all of them. So yeah, I think you're going to continue to see more of that. It's a good strategy. Obviously, I'm biased of that. So yeah, I'm excited to see where some of this stuff nets out.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been highlighting all the big projects in crypto, and of course, this is what our community has come up with. This is what they've nominated. This is why Optimism's up here. That's why Solana's up here. Thorchain being one of those projects that seems a huge boost to wrap up the year also in this. And of course, we are celebrating all these projects for what they've built over the course of 2023 and what's to come in 2024. And I can't thank you guys enough for coming on here, by the way, because I know you guys are very busy in what you have to do. But as Tony knows, we always wrap up here with big, bold calls for what you're expecting to see. And this doesn't need to be project specific. This could just be Web3 or crypto at large, because you guys are the experts here. Totally. I think last time you came on, it was, I can't even remember what it was, but it was right, because we wouldn't have had you back on if it was wrong. But I am curious what you're seeing for 2024. What's Tolly's big, bold call for 24?
My engineering timeline prediction is that 50-50 odds Fire Dancer will be full on mainnet by next breakpoint.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on that, though, because that was a huge update.
I know.
I was looking
I
back.
can't believe you didn't plug Fire Dancer either. I was waiting for it. Yeah.
Where's the shout out Fire Dancer?
He's saving the ammo for 2024 project of the year, man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean that was one thing. You announced it at Breakpoint. I mean, I'll give you a quick shot to include why it's so huge and what it means the
Yeah,
next time we'll be talking about it.
this is like like the most important thing for a layer one to do is to like eliminate all single points of failure. And this is a separate team re-implementing the Solana protocol from the ground up. But what's cool is that they're as big of hardware nerds as us, if not better, and they've hyper optimized this code all in C, and they're demonstrating that the protocol can handle tens of gigabits worth of throughput. So like when people talk about scale, like and stuff like this, like if you need 100,000 TPS, it's achievable on today's hardware with like optimized code like FireDancer. So that the fact that that's proven out means that like Solana's scaling roadmap is effectively done. So having them build the full implementation and get it to mainnet is the big milestone. What they've achieved last year is they have what we call Frankendancer, part implementation from FireDancer, part from the labs code that's running in testnet, and it's working. And this is kind of like if you're an engineer and you like kind of like any engineering environment, if you like take one part out and you put another one in and everything's working, it's a huge milestone because now like you're kind of like working downhill. You're making incremental changes and you can see things working. You get that instant feedback that you're on the right track. So like
Yeah.
that was a huge milestone. And now I see their commits, all this stuff is public and go on GitHub. It just feels like they're cranking stuff out. And I have like 50-50 confidence that by this breakpoint, because the team is like really, really wants to get it done, we'll have full implementation that's mainnet compatible. And that would be like, I will like crack a bottle of champagne.
I will accept that. I will accept that big bold call as one. And yes, Ryan,
Yeah.
it's one that we've talked about with Tolly before for sure. But I think that point's really well made there, Tolly, in the way that everyone else might be experts in their own fields and checking all these things. It's kind of core to why we built Coinage the way we did, with having people look at problems in different ways and plugging them into our own ecosystem to kind of help steer the stories that we tell. And Ryan, on your side, I mean, I guess it's a full field for big bold calls, and I suspect it won't have anything to do with Fire Dancer for 2024. But what's your big prediction for next year?
I think thematically, though, this idea of identifying scaling challenges and resolving them is actually in line, and something like that Fire Dancer does as well. Like we're going to be showing interop inside of our superchain ecosystem. And I think that's exciting. Like the ability for them to actually talk and show fluidity between multiple L2s is going to be a really exciting scaling opportunity to show off. Again, you hear a lot of talk about it in the ecosystem. So actually demonstrating it is going to be really fun. And these kind of shared network upgrades and what it looks like from a governance standpoint, this will be a reality in 24 for Optimism. So I think that will be super fun to unveil and will be really energizing for the Ethereum community that has at large had to deal with some of these developer challenges, and also with the users that participate in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'd say secondly, I'm probably more crazy, but this is for the broader crypto industry. I see all of this, regulatory pressure trying to ratchet up, but I actually believe in the US by the end of next year, hopefully we're in a better place where some clarity has been provided. It'll be a long multi-year road on that from a policy perspective, and passing bills in Congress takes a long time. But I believe that there will be more of an awakening inside of DC around the benefits of the tech and how to better support it versus this very broad anti-crypto binary look on it. My hope is we'll start to have a more nuanced understanding in DC, and obviously everybody's contributing to that. And to me, let people advance technology, be advocates of it. That's what's awesome. So I'm excited for that. And I think all of these protocols that are trying to do good by the world will benefit from that. That might be the most wild take, given how bearish the stance is in DC. So we'll see. I could be completely wrong next year when we talk, but I'm going to be optimistic. It's very in line with the team.
I love it, man. This is like that would be a dream come true too. Probably worth more than all the Fire Dancers combined, as if we get like the fit market build pass and a stable coin build pass. I feel like it would just like unlock American innovation like around the world. So we're fingers crossed for like some that Congress does its job, you know?
Yep.
I think we're all aligned. I think we're all aligned in that. And we had Hester Peirce on the show this year as well, also echoing a lot of the technological pieces that the U.S. can't get wrong in letting builders build. But I can't thank you guys enough for coming on. I think that was a great conversation. And congrats again to Optimism, to Solana, to Toli, to Ryan for everything you guys and your teams have done this year. Congrats on being nominated as Crypto's Projects of the Year. And of course, everyone listening, our NFT holders can go to coinage.media for more information and to vote on who will eventually be crowned the one that we say is Crypto Project of the Year. Of course, those will come out next year. But Toli, Ryan, I appreciate you guys coming on. Thanks so much. Hopefully we can have you back soon. Have a happy new year if I don't see you until then. For everybody, I'm Zach Guzman. Thanks for listening. You can learn more and join our community at coinage.media. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.